This podcast is about the Great Depression. The Great Depression was the biggest economic crisis to ever happen in the United States. It was a severe economic slump that hit America from 1929 to 1939.
They used to tell me
The land was gone, the house was gone, and we had 30 days in which time to move out.
when there was earth.
Although the U.S. had gone into depression 6 months earlier, the Great Depression was mainly caused by a devastating collapse of stock market prices on the New York Stock Exchange in October 1929.
It caused a rise in crime rates as many unemployed people turned to theft and women turned to prostitution. Suicide, alcoholism, and malnutrition rates rose. The number of children in schools shrunk as they started working to help their families.
During the Depression, 20% of children were hungry or starving and did not have proper clothing. In some coal mining regions, 90% of the children that resided there were malnourished. The children did not have warm clothes or shoes during the brutal winters.
My father came home and asked what was for dinner that night, and my mother said, "There's nothing." How could that be? How could there be nothing?
40% of people between the ages of 16 and 24 didn't work or attend school during this difficult time. About 3 million children between the ages of 7 and 17 had left school, and thousands of schools closed. Schools that were still open were understaffed and had little funds.
Marriages were delayed because men waited to propose until they could provide for a family. Birth rates fell as well as divorce rates, as most husbands chose abandonment instead, running away from their marriages. It was called the poor man's divorce.
As times got harder, many Americans turned to movies and music to cope with the problems that they were experiencing. Classic films such as Frankenstein and Gone with the Wind debuted during the Depression, and many Americans flocked to see them as an escape from their daily lives. People also listened to the radio a lot, as anyone who owned a set could listen for free.
There were many migrants during the Depression, mostly teenagers looking for jobs to help support a family back home. Over 600,000 people were caught hitching rides on trains during the Depression, but most went unpunished.
Rural regions such as Oklahoma and Missouri lost many of their population as people moved north to cities, hoping for more opportunities. Many also headed west to California, but since as many as 800,000 people moved there, most ended up competing with others for small jobs that paid low wages, such as picking crops.
The Great Depression was finally ended by the New Deal in the early 1940s. The Depression had impacted not only the U.S., but also areas in Europe and South America. The governments of countries that were hit went through huge reforms to try and ensure another depression would not happen. Many people who lived through the Great Depression are still very careful with their money and wary of banks.
As you can see, the Great Depression was a very difficult time in American history. We hope that you have gained a new understanding of this important struggle that impacted multitudinous Americans. Thank you for listening.
Buddy, can you spare